Hello everyone, welcome to Art 202, the Renaissance to Contemporary Art. This semester we're going to be taking a look at the second half of the Art Survey courses. We're roughly going to be covering about 600 plus years of art, covering about 1400 to contemporary. And mainly what I want to focus on for the first unit is the Renaissance and how foundational this is for the art world, because every art movement that comes after it is going to be responding either directly to or indirectly to the Renaissance and its artistic principles in terms of how to create form, how to understand beauty and line, and we're going to take a look at why the Renaissance is so important and why it casts such a large shadow over the art world. Today, I wanted to just briefly go over some of the major learning outcomes for this unit. I won't do this for every unit that we study, but I wanted to start with a good foundation for you to understand what I want you to get out of the class and out of the major ideas. And this will help us as we go throughout the semester to know how to approach each unit. What are the main ideas and principles that I want you to learn? Number one, I want you to understand the complexity of the term Renaissance and its stylistic elements. What are the main qualities? What are the main artistic principles that are associated with the Renaissance? Anytime we're taking a look at art history, as art historians, we look back and think, what are the common elements that artists had during that given time? What were they responding to, and how stylistically are they in common, or what do they have in common? And so I want you to be able to know what are the styles of the Renaissance so that you can take a look at a Renaissance painting, even if you're not familiar with it, and be able to identify that this probably comes from the Renaissance because it has these specific elements to it. Number two, I want you to identify the main artists and their works from the era and why they represent the early Italian Renaissance. And so I want you to know some of the major artists out there, why they're influential. So I want you to think about, as we go throughout these artists, what is it about them that stands out? What are they doing differently? What are they doing that is so influential? And what is it about their works that still resonates with us to this day? And number three, I want you to be able to comprehend the legacy of the Renaissance and how it reshaped modern thought and continues to influence the contemporary world. And so what are the major ideas, the principles that are foundational for the Renaissance, and how do they continue to shape the way that we see the world around us? Because it's going to be vastly different from the Middle Ages, which came before it. Number four, I want you to understand the key concepts and ideas that shape the artistic and intellectual thought during the Renaissance. And so what are the major ideas, the philosophies? How do people respond to religion? What does it mean to be human? These kind of questions were pretty important for the Renaissance, and they continue to shape the way that we perceive the world around us. I wanted to start with this particular quote. This comes from President Kimball. And someone asked him about Michelangelo, and this is what he says. He says, "But then we ask, can there never be another Michelangelo? Ah, yes, as David in Florence and as Moses in Rome inspire us to the point of adulation. Could not we find a living talent like this, but with a soul that was free from immorality, sensuality, and intolerance?" And I think that as I stand before either Michelangelo's David in Florence or his Moses in Rome or any of Israel's statues or paintings, there is a sense of awe, there is a sense of reverence about them, and the way that he's able to capture these forms, and the way he's able to inspire us to look to the divine and become better people. And I like to start with this particular image of Michelangelo's David and this particular quote by President Kimball, because we're going to be taking a look at art, and not all the artists, when they're representing the human form, are representing things that are going to conform to the BYU dress code. And so we need to be aware of that moving forward, and we need to be able to understand that the human body is not something that that we should be ashamed of. There are things that, time and places for things, but artists are trying to celebrate the creation. And so we're going to see sometimes artists are going to depict forms that are not going to be conforming to the particular dress standard. So I just wanted to throw that out there so there's no no cause for alarm with that. Let's take a look at some of the major elements that create this legacy for the Renaissance. That some of the major changes that happen that influence the way that they start to see the world. One of the major elements that happened during the Renaissance was Christopher Columbus sailing to the west to find a new route to the Indies. And so mainly what he wanted to do is find a new path to India, and looking for perhaps a new way or a new way to get there. And what happened was he discovered this new world, quote unquote new world, the Americas, and this radically changed the way that Europeans saw the world. It just seemed much bigger, much more diverse, much more complicated than was originally perceived. And so if you think about, all they really know is Europe and Asia and a little bit of Africa. Now all of a sudden there's these new people, these new plants and animals, and they have to be able to try to reconcile that. What does this actually mean? And so it was really a paradigm shift for many, as would be similar to us discovering life on another world, right? It would really cause us to really reflect, what is life? What's the meaning of life? What is it, everything? How does everything fit together? And so you see these radical changes starting to emerge during the Renaissance, and the old way of thinking about the world was beginning to burst, right? And I like this particular quote because we generally don't read Christopher Columbus and his words, but I think there's some interesting insights that we can learn from them. He says this. He says, this is coming from his journals. Or sorry, this comes from First Nephi. Then we'll take a look at his journals and see how he responds to this, right? And this is says, and I looked and beheld a man among the Gentiles, right? This is Columbus, who was separated from the seed of my brethren by many waters. And I beheld the Spirit, and it came down and wrought upon the man, and he went forth upon the many waters, even unto the seed of my brethren who were in the promised land. And so this is Nephi getting this vision of this person, i.e. Columbus, coming over a large body of water to see his brethren, right? The people that have remained after the Nephites perish, but he sees them and interacts with them. And this is what Columbus says, and this comes from his journal. So I think this is kind of an interesting quote because it shows him and his response to the Spirit, right? He says, with a hand that could be felt, the Lord opened my mind to the fact that it would be possible to sail from here to the Indies, and he opened my will to the desire to accomplish the project. This was the fire that burned within me when I came to visit your highness, right? So he's going to get funding from the king and queen, and because he needs financing for the boats, the ships, to be able to do it. And he just tells them that there's this, the hand of the Lord. He was pressed, right? Who can doubt that this fire was not merely mine, but also the Holy Spirit, who encouraged me with a radiance of a marvelous illumination from his sacred scriptures? We often read in the church the First Nephi quote about Columbus, but we don't really read his own experience of how he felt when he was encountering this. And I wanted to take a look at this, just one more quote from Columbus. This one is about what he saw when he got there, right? So he sees this new world. He's not expecting this, and he just has to come to terms, right? His mind has to reconcile with this newfound land. And this is what he says. On Sunday, October 21st, at 10 o'clock, we arrived at a cape on the island and anchored the other vessels in company. So he's around Bermuda, the Bahamas, somewhere in there. After having dispatched a meal, I went ashore and found no habitation save a single house, and that without an occupant. We had no doubt that the people had fled in terror at our approach, right? They haven't seen anybody for a while, so it would be really scary to see these huge ships coming up. As this house was completely furnished, right? So they all left. I suffered nothing to be touched and went with my captains and some of the crew to view the country. This island even exceeds the others in beauty and fertility. Groves of lofty and flourishing trees are abundant. as also large lakes surrounded and overhung by the foliage in a most enchanting manner. Everything looked as green as in April in Andalusia, which is in Spain. The melody of the birds was so exquisite that one was never willing to part from the spot, and the flocks of parrots obscured the heavens. The diversity in appearance of the feathered tribe from those of our country is extremely curious. 1,000 different sorts of trees with their fruit were to be met with, and of a wonderfully delicious odor. And so this is him seeing this new world, seeing things, trees and surroundings that he's never seen before, and trying to come to terms with it. Now he's going to come back to Europe with this information, and it's going to blow everyone's mind. And all of a sudden they have to rethink their paradigm that they're the only people in the world, and they have to now reconcile that the world is much bigger and more complicated than originally believed. The other major influence from this was the discovery of chocolate, right? As witnessed by Cortez, he says, from time to time they shared with him, Montezuma the king, in cups of pure gold, a certain drink made of cacao. It was said that it gave one power over women, but this I never saw. I did see them bring in more than 50 large pitchers of cacao with froth in it, and he drank some of it, the women serving with great reverence. And so people saw this, and this new drink, this new kind of foods that are then going to come back to Europe and take Europe by storm. The Spaniards, both men and women that were accustomed to the country, are very greedy of this chocolate. They say they make diverse sorts of it, some hot, some cold, some temperate, but therein much of that chili, yea, they make paste thereof, the which they say is good for the stomach. And so they're going to bring this back to Europe, and it's going to take Europe by storm, and it's going to be the drink of the aristocracy. The kings and the queens are going to look for this rich drink, and it's going to be something that's highly praised. And it's not really until the 1800s that chocolate becomes much more mass-produced and available to everyone. Once it starts to hit Switzerland, it starts to become more mass-produced. I had the opportunity to go to kind of the home of chocolate in Brock, Switzerland, and it's just this tiny little town that's it's kind of in the middle of Switzerland, and the only way to get there is on a tiny little train. And you get off the train, and it smells just like the Celestial Kingdom. It smells just like chocolate. And as you walk through the kind of beautiful, picturesque town, you see these two major chocolate distributors. You see Nestle on the left, and then Caillé Chocolate on the right. And these become the major kind of source of chocolate. And there you see my wife. After we go through the chocolate tour, there was a huge table about the size of a large room with all you can eat free samples for you to enjoy. And this is going to really revolutionize the world. It changes the way that we kind of think and interact, and becomes kind of foundational for modern society. As we take a look, another major legacy of the printing press, more on a serious note, would be the development of the printing press. And this is going to be as revolutionary as the internet, right? This makes information more easily available and more readily available, and it's going to change the ability for people to communicate, and it's going to make publications much more widely distributed. President Joseph Fielding Smith said about the publication of the printing press, right? Publication of books, including the Bible, was too great a force to be stemmed. Like an irresistible flood, printing and the desire to read what was printed swept over the entire land. And so people are going to start wanting to read and think for themselves, rather than having to go to their clergy or the priests, right? They could be able to read and think for themselves, which in the Middle Ages was not even possible. People were largely illiterate, but now we have knowledge and information becoming more widely accessible to everyone, right? So there's this rise of excitement in education, and it made writings, the Bible, more accessible to everyone. And so there was this excitement for learning and growth during this time. The third major legacy of the Renaissance was the Reformation. That was kind of created by Martin Luther, kind of unintentionally created by Martin Luther, which creates this major change in the church, where Catholicism had the stranglehold over thought and ideas and religion. Now we're starting to see they're not having the stranglehold over thought and ideas anymore with the printing press, and now they're not having control over religion anymore because of the Reformation. So the idea of the Middle Ages was it was strongly controlled by the Catholic Church, and that is starting to break away, and new ideas are starting to emerge as a result of the Renaissance and the spread of information. Elder McConkie said this about Martin Luther. He said, "Luther's break with Catholicism was part of the divine program. It came as an Elias, preparing the way for the restoration." And so this is all kind of paving the way for new ground to be taken and for the gospel to be restored. Another major development for the Renaissance was the invention of the telescope with Galileo Galilei. And he mainly just developed the way of using lenses in order to peer into the universe, so to speak. And he's starting to see scientifically how the planets move and how they are arranged, and what's actually, how the universe is actually put together, which starts to question the idea of the Catholic Church and how creation existed and how the universe was put together. And what he argued was that celestial bodies are not perfect, and we live in a heliocentric universe, meaning that the sun is the center of our universe, or in this case, the solar system, rather than what was previously believed is that God created the earth to be at the center of the universe. And he suggests we're not even the center of our own solar system. And so we need to reconcile scientific understanding with faith, and that conflict begins in the Renaissance. And it's not going to be resolved with the Renaissance, but that conflict of where does scientific understanding pick up, and where does religious faith end, right? How do we reconcile those two forces? In questions of science, the authority of 1,000 is not worth the humble reasoning of a single individual, right? So the idea is that we need proof on some things in order to base our understanding. Not that we should throw out all faith, right? But we need to be able to question some ideas and be able to find some type of data to be able to rely on that. And that idea really starts with the Renaissance. He says, another quote from Galileo is, "All truths are easy to understand once they are discovered. The point is to discover them." And I think that is really a key element to this legacy of the Renaissance, that we can't just rely on what past understandings have led us, because they could be wrong. We need to be able to have the freedom to discover them, right? That starts with this kind of mind-blowing event of looking at the world differently because of Columbus. That starts because of the spread of information, this excitement to understand new ideas that was brought by the printing press, right? So we have these foundational elements that start to create this new understanding for everything that comes after it. The other major understanding or major legacy of the Renaissance are obviously the artists that come from it. Botticelli, Fra Angelico, Leonardo, Donatello, Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael, the Ninja Turtles, Bramante, Brunelleschi, Ghiberti, Alberti, Albrecht Dürer, Jan van Eyck, Giorgio Vasari, Matthias Grunwald, Hieronymus Bosch, and Giovanni Bellini, all of these that we'll take a look at over the next couple of weeks. And you'll become very familiar with, and hopefully throughout your life they'll become kind of quasi-friends as you become extremely familiar with their ideas. But these artists are going to be the major players that really transform the art world and cast that shadow over everything that comes after them. And finally, one of the last major ideas that I want to talk about in the terms of the legacy of the Renaissance is how we come to understand ourselves, right? The view of humanity greatly changes, right? There's the idea of the humanities, the studia humanitatis, the study of humanities, comes about that we want to see ourselves, understand who we are, just study human beings, rather than having to, in the Middle Ages, we only studied religion, right? Well, what we see during the Renaissance is is that universities start saying, well, is there another way? I mean, religion is great to study, but is there a way that we can also study just ourselves? Philosophy, ideas, art, culture, literature, just things that are important to human beings. That's just a little bit away from, to religion. And so that's where the Studia Humanitatis, or the study of humanities, comes from. And they're trying to, in these studies, they're trying to reconcile all these new ideas. How do we understand life? What does it mean to be human? Where am I? Where do I come from? What do the past artists from ancient Rome and ancient Greece say? Well, what are their major ideas? What does mythology teach us? What truths are there that are out there? And so what we see coming out of this is it fundamentally changes the way we see ourselves. We no longer view ourselves as an evil accident of creation like we did during the Middle Ages. We no longer see ourselves as agents to be acted upon in some predestined world as we did during the Middle Ages. We start seeing ourselves as agents to act with free will, right? And that's what we see being celebrated here with Michelangelo's The Creation. This idea of God reaching out to humanity and humanity having the free will to desire to reach back, right? Even before that spark of life, right? Even before God touches Adam's finger here, Adam has that eternal desire to reach back, right? That's what makes humanity special. That's what makes humanity different and great, is we have that capacity to act, to choose to act. And that idea is revolutionary during the Renaissance. And we still maintain that idea, right? Because it comes so foundational to the way that we understand the world around us, right? We want to learn who we are. We sought answers to these questions. Who am I? Where am I? Where do I come from? Where am I going? Right? We look for answers just beyond the Roman Catholicism. We were looking for capital T truth, right? And we need this desire to continue to learn and to grow beyond past understandings. And so these are just the kind of the 6 major legacies of the Renaissance that I wanted to take a look at. Next, we'll take a look at kind of the historical developments that are happening that lead to some of these changes, as we take a look at the competition for the baptistry doors in Florence.